wanted to see what would grow and what wouldn't grow. We're at about 2,900 feet. It was actually a greater revelation. Somehow I think our Father has a purpose in all of this. One of his purposes is to keep us in the Word. But what we're trying to show people is that they can actually do this. And I know they can because we're doing it.
Welcome to another edition of Present Truth from Camp Tamiyd with Tom Stapleton. Today, Tom is joined with some of the residents here at Camp Tamiyd. We've got his daughter, Alicia, and her husband, Brian Benoit, and their two children, Seth and Savannah, live with them. And to my right, we have Sebastian and Tasha Miller, and their 6 children live with them here. And I'm Tom's wife, Judy. Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about Camp Tamiyd and your role here as director?
Well, Camp Tamiyd was a dream in my mind that started about 8 years ago, and we managed to secure a piece of property. We have 280 acres out in the wilderness in British Columbia, and we are a ministry. That's what we are, a ministry. And people have said, well, you run out into the wilderness, and how does the ministry work like that? Well, we actually can reach people in their living rooms, in their homes, through satellite and internet. So we actually are reaching thousands upon thousands of people right from here. So we have quite a thriving ministry going here. And we have some helpers, and we want to talk to our helpers today. They have come from other places, and we're going to ask them why they have come to live in the wilderness with us and do ministry work. So let's start with you, Tasha and Seb. Why did you come to Camp Tamiyd? What was it that kind of sparked you to come out here?
Why did we come here? We came here because the Spirit called us to come here.
Now, just a minute, Seb. You're saying that the Spirit has called you. Do you know that I'm talking to people all over the world now today that they believe the Spirit is calling them into the country and away from the centers of the metropolises of the world.
Yeah.
Now, why do you feel the Spirit of God would tell you to do that?
Well, I believe that He does call everyone to the country. I believe that originally God's plan was for everyone to be more dispersed than what they are now.
He started us in the garden.
Yeah.
He started us in a garden.
And what better place to be to have us more spiritually and physically prepared for the return of our Savior? I mean, you can't do that downtown.
And we know that we're going back to the garden, right? We started in the garden. He wants to bring us back to the earth made new.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're suggesting there's a circle going on, so
we're coming full
circle.
Yeah.
So we're going back to where God first created us.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you guys, I'd like to know a little bit more about the situation, the reason why you actually found yourself here at Camp Tamiyd.
Okay. Well, it was about 4 years ago now, because we've been here just over a year, and we knew God was calling us out to the mountains. And we were in Alberta in the prairies, so I mean that's a whole nother province over. And so there were some logistics that were literally impossible for us to actually move over another province. So you kind of put that out of your mind and think, well, God can't do those things, but He sure can. So don't ever think it's impossible to do something like that. Because I hear people say all the time, oh, I could never leave my job and I can't do this. Yes, you can. And the way that you can do that is to specifically put your ear up and hear what He's exactly telling you to do. So, I mean, we were looking for properties. We were asking God, what He wanted us to do. And He said, you know what, start paring down all your stuff. So we started selling all of our stuff. Seb made this preposterous idea. He came up with this idea that if we sold our house, we would sell. The buyer would come along and they'd want to buy everything in our house. And, I was appalled. I thought, well, I can't sell everything in my house. And he said, well, we'll work on that, Tash. And so it was about a year before we actually moved. And I finally came to the conclusion that would be a good idea. So we did pray for that. and just to jump forward, we ended up with a buyer who bought all of our furniture from
Wow.
our house. So, you know, we started paring down our stuff and we started putting our head in an off-grid situation because we knew we'd be off-grid. So we got rid of our kitchen appliances. We didn't have many, and started figuring out how we could do things manually. Like how were we going to live this lifestyle?
A little bit more simple.
Yeah, just try to simplify things. We were in the process of selling, and we're like, well, do we put in a garden? Do we not? And no, we're not going to put in a garden because we're going to be selling. God said, put in a garden. And as soon as that happened, you know, we found this back to Eden gardening method. And so we tried that out the next year. And you know what? That was our little learning. That's
amazing. So,
Yeah.
so what you're saying is, even though you didn't have a place to move to, and you were actually making preparation when you got the call
Yes.
to leave, you started following your convictions, and you started
Yes.
doing things, getting your house ready for sale.
Yes.
These are sort of fleeces, if you will.
Absolutely.
You put out there, and God started taking care of your list.
He did.
Yeah.
And we had debt. We didn't have a lot of debt, but we thought, how are we going to get rid of this debt? And I can't even go through all the miracles that happened, but because we purposed in our hearts, we're not going with a bunch of debt because we just can't. Like, we can't. And so we ended up getting rid of all of our debt right to the end, where all we had to do was sell our house, and that was it. So, you know.
So, you know, this is really neat. I find this really inspiring because when you guys came, we had met you a couple of years ago. You came to a couple of the feasts here, and
Yeah.
we got to know you as a family.
Yeah.
You got to know us, and so long and short of it, you ended up coming here to live. And you put a garden together that this year has been the first year because you're trying to get a house prepared for your
Yeah.
family and so on. But this year you've been able to garden. And you've actually made a believer out of me in this method.
Well, praise.
And
praise
so,
him.
so I find this really interesting. As you were preparing to leave, God says, put a garden in. So
Yeah.
you're doing some research. How do we garden?
Right.
You find out this back to Eden gardening method. And I just want to tell people on the camera right now, you know, we're having a little discussion here, but they're telling me that they have not even watered their garden all year.
And it's
Not once.
late August.
Not once.
right now.
Not even when the seed went in the ground, we didn't even put
No.
water in.
Yeah, and,
Because
and so we did a little bit of chipping. I don't know if you're familiar with the Back to Eden method, but I would suggest if you're a gardener to check it out. So once I started believing, seeing is believing, we started chipping trees. We had chipping days, and we were making chips like crazy. And we weren't putting salt and vinegar on them. We were putting them on the garden.
Yeah.
So, and so I've started doing that, and I can't believe it. It's like the watering just
yeah.
goes down to basically zero. The moisture is held in the ground. So anyways, I just want to say thank you for bringing that to the camp, because this is going to save us like huge time in watering and energy.
Weeding.
What I find interesting is that you had no idea where you were going
No.
when all of these things, the Lord started leading you in the path of what you needed to know
which is
before you ever moved.
Yeah, which is a huge leap of faith. And the story that I really love is in Genesis 12 when it talks about Abraham, and God came to him and he said, Abraham, take your family, leave your father, leave your kin, and I want you to go because I'm going to make a great nation out of you. Well, there's a couple things in there that you can look at and you go, God didn't just rip the carpet out from underneath of him and he ended up in a cardboard box with
Yeah.
this whole family.
There's always something good that the Father has in store for us. He
Yeah.
never moves in a way that is going to be harmful for us or
No.
negative for us. It's always for the better.
No.
Right, and in Hebrews it tells us that he went out not knowing where he was going.
Exactly.
Not
He
really
didn't.
knowing. He
Yeah.
was following
didn't.
God's leading, and that's
Yeah.
basically
And that's exactly
been
what.
your story.
yeah.
Now, the other thing I want to mention is you felt you needed to go in the country, but while you're going into the country, you're actually moving to where there's a ministry, and the work of
Yeah.
Camp Tamiyd is a ministry.
Yeah.
It's not a hideout, it's not a retirement center, but it's a ministry. So how are you finding that concept?
I think it is wonderful. It's beautiful. keeps us accountable, and we have found so many blessings in serving and working with each other and living together, and it's almost like we're a family here, and it's almost like there's a reason why God has us here working together as a family. I don't know. There's a family in heaven, and
They were reading about that today.
yeah, absolutely. We were reading just today, during the Sabbath, how God is trying to connect us back to his family in heaven, and the family is possibly in heaven as well. And so there's something going on here for sure. Absolutely.
So, Alicia and Brian, how are you finding living out here in the wilderness?
Well, I have for a long time wanted to live in the wilderness, and especially since Alicia and I have been together, it was like, yeah, we want to live in the woods somewhere. So when we had the opportunity to come on out here, it was kind of like a no-brainer. In our minds, we've been preparing for a long time to just move way out into the woods. Then when it was available, it was just like, it was actually sort of fairly quick, but it was just
And
like,
with your
we're going.
job, like,
Yeah.
you know,
So, and I happened to get a job that is only an hour away from here, living out in the middle of nowhere. So that's
Right.
played along very nicely.
That's
But
cool.
living in the wilderness is wonderful.
What about living in a ministry community?
Living in the ministry community is something that I was not prepared for. And it's been really good in the way that it's made me, that it's grown me. Like I was not
Amen.
ready for it. It came up here, it's challenged me. There's a lot of different aspects to look at when living in a ministry that made me uncomfortable at first and sometimes still do. And now I kind of like that.
It's quite a bit different, I find myself, from living downtown. I lived in the city for many, many years. And you can have neighbors and you don't hardly know them. Yeah, you say hi to them and whatever, and you may know where he works or what he does for a living, but you don't really have a connection with them. Would you guys all say that you have a pretty close connection with your neighbors, and that that if there arises a challenge, you can't ignore it? So with your neighbor maybe downtown, he sort of rubs you the wrong way, you ignore it or whatever, you avoid him. But when we're in community, in God's, so to speak, community, he asks us to work out our challenges.
Amen.
And I have found myself personally, the concept of Matthew 18, even in Christian churches, it seems Matthew 18, where if you have aught against a brother, that Yeshua says go to him, but so often all we do is talk about them,
Yeah.
Exactly.
and we don't go to them. But I think in a community like this, it's almost like a preparation for God's kingdom, because we are now forced out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And if we have a challenge with a brother, we need to talk to him, not only so that to set our minds straight, so that maybe we can help him, and most often both benefit by
Amen.
that.
Yeah.
So
Amen.
Yeah.
how have you find that? Have you found your sanctification process is sped up a little bit?
That would probably be the best way of describing it. And there has been Matthew 18s that have gone around, and it's amazing. I like how you said that it was God is bringing us kind of in a place that's uncomfortable, because if we were thrown into heaven right now, I don't know how we would do. I don't know. We would be feeling very uncomfortable in a place like that. So,
I wonder what my neighbor's saying about me.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we have to start learning these things, and I would encourage people from around the world to get involved with a community around them. And I mean, when we first came here, we didn't necessarily want to come to here. We were definitely called to, but we didn't necessarily want to. Not saying
This was not our plan. Our
It wasn't our
plan
plan.
was to be by ourselves, call our own shots and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. Because we thought about, community and that sort of thing, because this was on the radar at the time. And we thought about all the relational problems that could happen and all that kind of stuff. And
Playing the what if games.
The what if
kinda,
games. And
yeah.
guess what? Those what ifs come true. But it's how you deal with it is
Right.
the key. So Matthew 18 has been used numerous times.
Yeah, and putting our neighbor before
Yeah,
ourselves.
and I know part of why everyone's here is we're being prepared for the second coming, the greatest event
Yeah.
in history up until this time. We're
Yeah.
preparing for that. Do you find this is a good place to raise your kids to prepare for the Lord's second coming?
Absolutely, I had that written down here actually. That what better place could you raise kids than a place like this in the middle of the Canadian Rocky Mountains, in the wilderness, in God's. I don't even know how. Like if you walk out in the forest, you're literally looking at hundreds of species of plants that we don't even know. There's so much life around us. We are getting back to creation. To we are finding a connection here better than in the cities. And
this reminds me of a story. Our viewers may know Alan, who's on with Present Truth with Tom quite a bit. He couldn't be here this weekend to be part of this. But Alan and his family went to a wedding. They were gone for about a week, not too long ago. And their 14-year-old boy and Alan went fishing one morning. And Gabe was like, "Dad, I'm ready to go home." And Alan just thought he meant, well, back to the family gathering. And Gabe was like, "No, Camp Tamiyd. I want to go back to Camp Tamiyd. I don't ever want to leave there ever again." So that was quite a testimony on one of our teenagers who would much rather be out here in this environment than in
that's amazing.
the
yeah.
city.
That's amazing.
Well, and I mean, for us, the oldest is 19. She's not looking to get out of here. She knows this is where she needs to be. She knows that in order to be physically and spiritually prepared, like there's no other place that she wants to be. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that she's going to live under our roof. She wants to be responsible, and she wants to, kind of to branch out on her own. And, so there's that possibility here.
Yeah, it is amazing. If there's any place to raise your kids in the country.
Now, here's another question. Of course, being part of the ministry, we're trying to follow God's ways. How do you find living in an environment where all the people around you are trying to do their best to be obedient to God's laws and His? So we're actually trying to be part of His kingdom, which would mean that we obey His laws. How are you finding that? Who would like to answer that?
Well, iron sharpens iron, and kind of back to when there's differences or when there's, misconceptions, and we come back to Matthew 18 and we deal with it and we talk it out, we know that we are all just trying to help each other get to the kingdom, right? So there doesn't need to be any, I feel, ashamed, or I feel like, why did they, bring this up or whatever. It's everyone's trying to help each other, right? So in that way, being in a community, if everyone's wanting to help each other, lift each other up, then it's better than just being by yourself in a little tiny cabin in the woods.
That's so true.
The thing that we get caught up in is, especially in a community like this, it's not like where we came from. We lived in a lake community. Down the street, John had parties, and it's like, oh, well, John's just having his parties, and Bob behind us is having his parties, and, well, they just don't know any better. In a community like this, you sometimes get caught up in, well, they should know better, right? They should know better because they're reading the same book I am, so why aren't they doing the same things that I'm doing? But not everyone's on the same path, but not everyone's at the same stage, and no one's better than anyone. It's just maybe someone's learned a little quicker.
Yeah, we're called. If
Or the Spirit has impressed this person, this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Hasn't chatted with
right.
this other person.
It's a growth thing, right?
It
We all
is.
are growing, and
It
we're all
is.
at a different place. And I've found, even in my own experience, where I've thought, well, I was ahead of somebody, but actually, as time went on, I was shown
Exactly.
that I wasn't actually ahead of anybody.
Exactly.
So but it's that back and forth, and we learn, and we get to be more graceful with each other because we realize that we all are having these challenges. God is calling us to a higher place all the time. So I find that myself. I really enjoy that part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Tom, what is your advice for people who are thinking about moving to a community?
Well, I don't know. Maybe we should get your advice because I'm kind of prejudiced. I have a mindset. But if I can say, someone asked me that actually on an email the other day. And I said, there's a few main rules that you have to go by. Because we're trying to follow God's ways, is number one, and some people might say, well, you're saying that because, but number one is anyone that's going to be part of a community has to realize that there is a hierarchy in that community.
Yeah.
There is someone that's leading out, and there will be helpers around that person, counselors, and this kind of thing, and so it's not a democracy.
No.
If we're trying to pattern after the Bible, somebody called me on something one time. They said, Tom, you show me one example of a democracy in the Bible, just one,
Right.
and I will understand why you're structuring your ministry like this. Well, it took me several years to realize that there's a reason why there isn't one, because they don't work. And we can see where there was people in the time of the Exodus, which is what we're paralleling right now, is there's time in the Exodus when there was other people that wanted to be a part of the leadership, and it was shown very quickly that they weren't part of the leadership. So it's just a concept. So people have to, and I encourage people to do this all over the world, because I believe we're going to need cities of refuge. In the near
Absolutely.
future, I call them arks, just like Noah, is people are going to need a place to go. And there's going to be leaders, there's going to be people that God is using to set these things up. So number one is, if you're going to be a part of the ministry, come to the place in your life where you're able to submit to the authority of wherever you're going. And if you can't, then I would recommend start your own.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's lots of area around. I know in British Columbia there's tons of areas, and I tell people when Lone Ranger comes into Camp Tamiyd, I just tell him to keep going past into the next camp, because it's not where he belongs.
Yeah.
No, we need to be a team. We need to all work together and strive to work together. And it's not for our glory, it's for God's glory. He's asked us to be an example to the world, and we've got to do it His way. That's just simple. And the other thing is, I believe, my personal belief is we have to have some core beliefs that are the same. We have to be able to say, yeah, I believe this, this, and this, and this.
Yeah.
And certain things in my mind are not negotiable. They're not negotiable, because if I believe a certain doctrine, it colors the way I think, and it colors my concept of God. So there are certain doctrines that I don't believe that are in mainstream out there that I don't believe, because I believe it taints God's character. So there's certain tenets of faith, so to speak, that we really need to have agreement on. Otherwise, there's going to be problems. And one of them I can think of is the appointed times. Huge problem. I had somebody say to me one time, we were going to celebrate the Day of Atonement on Thursday or something. They said, well, we already did on Tuesday, so you mind if we do work around the camp? And I said, that's not going to work. And it doesn't mean that we have the right timing. It's that we have to be as one.
To work together.
And worship, you have to have a very similar worship schedule, or it's going to be a problem. Those are two main, a few of the main things in my mind. Of course, we have a constitution that lays out a lot of guidelines and some things that aren't negotiable, that people have to realize that this is the way it is. And Torah and following God is obviously paramount.
Amen.
So, Alicia and Brian, was moving to Camp Tamiyd and living here, has it been what you and your children expected?
Well, being here now is actually a lot different than when we first arrived. We've been here now 2.5 years almost, And when we first arrived, we actually were the first to move onto the campsite, and it was a pretty quiet place. Our dog had free rein, and it was very, very quiet. Dad moved up shortly after that, but we kind of, our plan, I think, when we moved here was we kind of were looking at the world around us for years, and like Brian said, we've kind of really wanted to move. We felt a calling to move to the country for many years. But we actually, things have changed a lot since we arrived, and for the better. It wasn't as much, it was a ministry when we moved here, but now it's become even more of a ministry because now we can see community happening, which it wasn't as much of a community, right? It was just us here.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess in some ways being in a community here presents different challenges than being on your own. And it's definitely been a learning experience and a faith-growing experience. And like everyone has kind of said, it has sharpened our characters, I think, to be in community and to, build all these relationships and, yeah.
I'd say it's either I didn't know what to expect when we came here, or it's absolutely the opposite of what I expected when we came out here. I was thinking we're gonna happily live in one of these little cabins that was here, and it would be quiet, and we'd do whatever we want, and it was free to live here. And then we quickly realized, you can't plow the driveway for free.
Yeah.
Or you can't have power for free,
Yeah.
at least not yet. So that sort of reality set in.
What about your children? What do they think about being here?
They love it, and I understand they never want to move away.
Wow.
That's what they've told us.
As challenges have come up over time, we had talked about, is this a place that we want to continue living at, or do we want to stay here? And we've chatted with the kids. We might, decide something and we might go somewhere else. And it's like, no.
No, it's not like you don't ever take them into the city. So
Right.
that it's not like you've taken them out and you won't allow them to go anywhere. They do venture into the city when you guys go and visit with people and,
Yep.
and so on. But they still like coming out here. Isn't that amazing?
They actually don't want to go to the city.
Wow.
So that was a conversation we had, our son Seth and I had. They would rather not go there. And currently, we homeschool, but they're involved in a homeschool co-op and some music lessons in town once a week. But we'll just have to kind of see how that goes because they actually would rather not go there. Like they would rather not go to the city.
Yeah, it's amazing. Kids nowadays, they're usually stuck in front of a computer or so on. But I see your kids all the time because they're out in the back of my place. And they're running through the woods and they're picking up different little critters and look at this, look at that, and seeing the beauties of nature. But when you go into the city, I can only imagine that they're under lockdown in somebody's house because it's not safe really to let them go outside and run around.
Yeah.
But here, it's completely different. We have to be aware of the animals and so on, but
But if you
Yeah.
look in nature, our kids love bugs, they love birds, they love fish, they love to be in the garden. And, a lot of Yeshua's messages they were all about the vineyards and the planting and all these things. And there's so many lessons you can pull out of all of that, whether it's working or playing or just enjoying nature. It's just
Have you seen spiritual growth and same to you and your children since you've been here?
definitely. And I think it really helps having Seb and Tasha have children here, and they're great, wonderful children, and Alan and Tabitha have children here, and so they're able to grow up with godly children, and I think that's such a blessing, which we
Amen.
didn't have when we first moved here. So we were
Yeah.
here for about a year, and our children, and it was a good season for them, but they're really enjoying having friends out here that they can fellowship with and grew up with. So,
And even babysitters.
oh, what a blessing that is.
It was
That's
always a
right.
struggle.
Yeah.
We were always talking about, do we want to live out in the middle of nowhere all by ourselves? Well, then the kids won't have any friends growing up. Well, do we want to live in a neighborhood? We're like, well, we don't want our kids growing up with the kids in the neighborhood. So
Yeah.
living here at Tamiyd has really met something that we were looking for. in
Well,
regards
and
to
like you
raising
say,
children.
yeah, and for us, it's great too. One of the benefits is we keep our kids in a jail at home. We never let them into the city. They joke about it. No, I'm
That's
kidding.
not entirely true.
Yeah,
but
it's not entirely true, but kind of. But if we go to the city, oh, Brian, Alicia, you guys going to be home today, or is Tom going to be here? And and yeah, a lot of them are old enough. But it's nice to have that feeling that, okay, if something goes wrong, somebody's here to
Yeah.
kind of take
Right.
care, and help out.
Right, and if
Right.
you were on your own out in the country somewhere, you wouldn't have
Yeah,
that.
we wouldn't have that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
a bit of a safety net, no
is.
question about
Yeah.
it.
Well-
I wouldn't want to live out here all by myself.
No.
Well,
I
yeah.
enjoy the community and working together as a team. We'll do something, we'll build something. Somebody needs hand doing something.
Yeah.
Somebody else is available, and
Yeah.
For
like
no
the
buying-
sawmill we just got, and we're
Yeah.
going down cutting some things.
Yeah.
We'll be able to cut wood that we need,
Yeah.
and it's just it's a team, really.
It's a team, but we're not a commune. Like, it's like, you guys have your place, you guys have your place, we have ours. It's, your stuff is not ours and ours is not yours. And, and that's one of the things I've heard lots of people say, oh, well, these community things are great. And I've actually had someone come to me and say, well, I could use your stuff, couldn't I? And I'm like, well, no, that's not how it works. Well, don't you think that would be selfish? And I'm like, well, I don't think that's the whole idea of what's going on here. It says Noah was to set up an ark for the saving of his family, not for,
Right.
let's come out here and set
It
up
is-
everyone's ark, right?
Exactly, and it's hard enough to take care of your own family, let alone a
Absolutely.
bunch of other families. And many people, when they're talking about communities, they're talking about Acts, where it says that everyone had in common all their goods and stuff. But we have to understand that was an entirely different situation. That
Yeah.
was when the church was under tremendous persecution. They were losing their jobs, their income, everything.
Yeah.
And so people helped each other because of the persecution that was going on. Right now, we don't have that. We will have that. There's a
Yeah.
day coming when we will have
Yes.
that. We recognize that as a camp, and we're building for that time when people won't have, and they'll have to escape the cities, basically with what's on their back. And we recognize that. And we're trying to make a little bit of that preparation too. But right now, we're building a place like Noah, so to speak, for the saving of our family. And that's what I like to recommend for every one of our viewers is this is not about somebody else providing you a place or a welfare or whatever.
Yeah.
This is where you can work together as a team so that your family can ride out the storm that's coming.
Yeah.
It's get your house in order. That's the time that we're living in.
Yeah,
Exactly.
especially for the no buy and no sell
yeah.
part.
Right. If we believe what it says in the Bible about the mark of the beast, not buying or selling, and everyone being forced to accept the mark of the beast, if we're going to escape that, that means we won't be able to buy or sell. Now, when was the last time you went to the store without money?
No,
You
that's
can't.
just it.
So if you're going to stay faithful to God, you're not going to be able to buy or sell. That means you're going to have to get out of the system. Simply, we feel, as you said, as you have said, that you felt the Spirit of God calling you out.
Yeah.
Now, this makes a lot of sense. It says, Solomon said, a wise man foresees trouble coming, and he hides himself.
yeah.
That's what a wise, but the foolish goes on and is punished or suffers for it. So God's people, and I know you guys are talking to other people that are saying, I'm feeling that we need to get out
Oh,
of
yeah.
the city.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe it's the Spirit of God trying to prepare people to get them to safe places so they don't need to buy or sell. And I was telling somebody the other day, you need to figure out how you're going to survive by what you can grow.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do that.
Yeah.
Well, Brian and Alicia, and Tom and us, we've planted tons of apple trees and we planted gardens. How many apples are you collecting this year?
Why not?
Right?
Well, we we know there's a time coming where we want our trees to be very fruitful. Besides the fact that some of them are 3-year-old trees, so we're trying to go by Torah principles, and we're not going to be using those. Some of them are 5-year-olds, but we know that if we pluck the fruit off and let the tree kind of develop, then later on, when
It'll be
we really
stronger.
need that fruit,
Yeah.
we're going to have a good harvest. So
Right.
in faith, we're just, trying to grow up our gardens and prepare our homes and
Well,
that
the
day.
point is, it takes time, right?
It does.
I mean,
Exactly.
we've put in a garden this year. It's doing good, but it's not to the point where,
Yeah.
wow, we have food till next year. So these things take time. So, we encourage people, if this is something you're thinking of doing, don't wait until it's too late. I mean,
Yeah.
it's because it will be too late. right?
Well, we know that back to the days of Noah, Noah was on the ark and the door closed 7 days before the rain even started to fall. So that tells me the opportunity to get on that ark, it had to be done before you even saw
Oh,
the sign of
yes.
danger.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
right.
Exactly.
If
That's
you
it.
wait-
It
Point.
talks
Yes,
about
it is.
him, like he was told to gather the seeds they would need. So it wasn't like the seed packets showed up in the ark. Like,
From,
he was told by God, and
Right.
that takes faith, right?
He had to gather the food for the
everything.
storm, and I
Yeah.
mean that's what we're doing. We're preparing, and a lot of people that I talk to figure it's just going to be a few months. Some people 5 days. Figure that one out. But the prophecies indicate there's going to be a 1,335-day period at the time of the end.
Yeah.
That's a few seasons. That means we're going to have to grow, and there's going to be a power and control that will force the mark of the beast during that time. So we're going to have to be able to go a few seasons on what we can grow.
And there's times of trouble before that 13
Sure.
or 35-day
Absolutely.
count even
Sure.
starts.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So, okay. Do you have any regrets?
I'm gonna be very bold right now to say that I do not have a regret coming to here, to the place that God has called us to be and my family to be. I have no regrets at all. Struggles and challenges and all of that, yes, because we're in a sin-filled world. I'm not perfect. We will have troubles. We will have challenges, I should say. But as far as regret coming here, not at all. And the heart of our family is to make it work, and to make it work with our neighbors and with everyone here. We want this to work. But there's a message to go out to the world. He's coming. He's coming back, and
There's hope.
and he wants us to, and there is hope, and he wants us to be joined.
And he's looking for a rich harvest, and you want to be part of that harvest, and you want your
Amen.
family to be with you.
Amen. Amen.
I believe, after talking with you guys, I believe that is really why you're here.
Amen.
And everything else just follows in its train.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you two?
As for regrets, I would say the only thing, I feel like this preparation to move to the country starts way before you actually move to the country. And I see that's with your story as well, and that was kind of with us as well. We actually lived kind of out in the country a few times before we ended up here. And, Brian got used to using a chainsaw, and we got used to having, wood as our only source of heat, actually when we still lived in the city. But all these things kind of led up to it. One thing I do wish, but of course, we just have to keep moving along, is that we had been even more serious at that time about getting our finances in order, way beforehand.
Good point.
Because, when you're in the city, there's a lot of distractions. It's hard, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
The
So-
distractions are many.
So I'd say, looking back, I think for anyone out there that's really thinking about this, start living like you're in the country when you're still in your current situation.
Absolutely.
Wow,
And start
good
thinking,
advice.
okay, well, we're not going to have this. How are we going to, we're going to get rid of our microwave and see how we can make popcorn a different way. And, just different things. Just start weeding things out of your life and and looking at, or are we buying a cup of coffee on the way to work every time, cut
Yep.
that out, like
Yeah, exactly.
start putting it towards your debts, all that kind of stuff. So
Well, and
Yeah.
kids in sports running to and fro, you won't have that when you're in a place
Yeah.
like this if you're far enough out. And just the cost and entertainment, and people say, oh, well, we can't afford to. Take a look at your daily and monthly costs, and you'd be very surprised to see how much money you can save in a month. Just that alone,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Okay, so no regrets, and I would, I want to thank both of you two families and Judy for
Thank
being
you.
here today. And anyone out there that is feeling God's call at this time in Earth's history, listen. Listen to the call. Talk to people, and when you find someone that is hearing that call, work together.
Yeah.
What I always tell people, it's one thing to go out into the country, it's another thing to go out by yourself. I don't think people are going to make it by themselves. They need community. How many times, Seb, have you had where you wished I could come over and help you, or Brian could
Oh,
help
my
you,
goodness.
or whatever? There's so many things can be done in community that are tenfold better than by yourself. And by yourself or with community, you're helping others prepare as well. So it becomes
Spiritually
more
as
than
well.
just about me. And I think
Exactly.
that's what it needs to be, more than about me.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us today. This has been another edition of Present Truth at Camp Tamiyd with Tom Stapleton. Thank you, Alicia and Brian, Seb and Tasha.
Thank you. Thanks
And-
everyone for listening.
And if you were interested in some of the topics we were talking about, the end times prophecy and Mark of the Beast, Tom has lots of videos available. You can go to our website at endtimesprophecy.com. Thank you.
What it looks like before the cameras are rolling.
Yes.
We should do some blooper takeouts sometime. That's kind of
I've
funny.
thought-
We don't need that on the table. It's my pink cup.
Shaking them.
Anything else you want?
And we have dogs at
Unlike
Camp Tamiyd as
Distracted.
well. And Kona just came in to visit us, okay?
Like, do I have to worry about talking? Like, can I just go on for like 5 minutes? Or like, does everyone get it?
No.
That's twisted. Okay, Seb's take 1.
Two.
No,
Two.
take two.
4. That's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we can't forget that
I'm
What
getting
we're
very
doing
mad.
here. There was a
Well.
little bit. There was a
Well.
little bit, but
Whoa,
yeah.
that just scared me.
Or if you start like, now, okay, blah, 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 blah. Thought he was auditioning
Okay,
for the
are
Bloopers
we
tape.
just playing here? Are we actually
Okay,
gonna get
Well, we
serious?
haven't. Okay, well, you're the boss. Oh, no, but it's about nap
come
time.
any
I'm
forward
starting
than I
to
do?
yawn,
Okay.
so.
You're all fired. Are we ready?
Oh,
Maybe.
yeah.
Are you ready, Janae?